guest is Becky Delaware. She's our Vice President Curator. Really doesn't need a lot more introduction than that. She's going to talk to us about the King trunk from the famous King family and its contents. So, Becky, thank you.
Well, first, I'm going to start with some genealogy so we know who we're talking about. Which isn't easy to keep straight in the King family because they use their famous family names over and over. Richard King came to Scarborough a little before 1744, and then he settled at Dunstan Landing Road on a piece of land that he had bought when he was in Massachusetts. There he had 3 children by Isabella Bragdon. There was Rufus King, who was quite well known nationally. He left Scarborough when he was 12 years old to go to Dummer Academy in Massachusetts and really never came back to Scarborough to live. He visited, but he didn't live here. In Massachusetts, he got involved in politics, and then after he was on the writing committee of the Constitution and helped write the Constitution, signed the Constitution, and then he moved to New York and was in the Senate from New York, the United States Senate from New York. He served as minister or ambassador to England several times, and he was a vice presidential candidate against Monroe. He was the last of the Federalist candidates. The Federalist Party kind of died out after that. Next is Mary, who married Dr. Robert Southgate. The brick house that's been remodeled on Route 1 down at Dunstan was Robert Southgate's house. He came to Scarborough as a doctor and ended up being a judge that settled many land claims in southern Maine. Then I have a typo. The name was Paulina, not Pauline. She married Dr. Aaron Porter. And I was just reading recently in one of these notebooks that was in the trunk. Paulina married Dr. Aaron Porter and had a daughter, Harriet. And Harriet was the mother, Harriet and her husband, were the mother of Harriet Beecher Stowe. Harriet married Lyman Beecher, and then they had Harriet Beecher Stowe. Then Isabella died, and he married Mary Black, and they had 6 children. Richard the second, or Junior, I usually call it Richard the son, to distinguish from Richard the father. And that is the line that we're going to primarily talk about, because that's the line the trunk comes from. He married Hannah Larrabee, and they had children, Isabella, Dorcas, William, who was first governor of Maine, Betsy, and Cyrus. Cyrus also served in the Congress of the United States from Saco. This is Richard King, the son, married Hannah Larrabee. Their children were Cyrus, Mary Southgate. They're using that Mary Southgate was an aunt, so they named their child after Mary Southgate. William, who never returned after he went to sea. Eliza, who was in Wyndham. Joseph Leland, Robert Southgate. They used Robert Southgate. Well, I only show him once there, but he died, and they renamed a second child after Robert Southgate.
He's there, done for.
This one lived. I was thinking there were a couple that died young, but there was just one that died young. Benjamin Jane Fidelia is the one associated with the trunk. And then Robert and Miranda, will come into play with her son Charles.
Becky, there was the Robert Southgate who wrote the early history of Scarborough.
William Southgate.
It was William.
And that was a grandson, I believe. So we start with the trunk. We call it at the Historical Society the King Trunk, because the kings were the people that were important in the town. Fidelia, I go back to Fidelia, married Aaron Hawks, and so she became Fidelia Hawks. This is the trunk here, and we have it here. Ina McDavitt is supposed to be the lady who was responsible for the trunk being kept. And she writes, "It appeared neither large nor imposing when I drew it forth from the darkest corner of the closet, brushing the accumulated dust of years from its faded cover. A shabby little trunk, less than 18 inches long and only half as tall, covered with black oilcloth, over which surface was a fine network of leaves and flowers outlined in dull red. The cover was ornamented with the initials FHK, Fidelia Hannah King, in brass-headed tacks, once bright, but now tarnished like their companions. The oilcloth and the leather that also studded the tacks bounded the trunk and divided the outside into 3 sections. So you can see the tacks there. The little brass handle was dim with time, and the oilcloth was already cleaving from the side. The look was old and worn. It was only after repeated efforts that it yielded to the touch, and the cover at last flew open. Instantly, I was a child again, at grandmother's feet, begging for a glimpse of what was in the little trunk. So today I'm going to show you a little bit of what was in the trunk. There was a lot of items in there. We have a notebook that thankfully someone in the King family wrote lots and lots of information, including identifying what has been identified in the trunk. There's still many things that were not identified. This is the trunk as it was opened to see what was in it. And this is the design on the trunk, on the oilcloth, the dull red and the gold. And this shows, I asked for this, I should use it right, the 3 parts the trunk is divided into, and there's your FHK of Fidelia Hannah King. This is Ina McDavitt, and she is the person on the back of the picture. It says she is the one who was responsible that this trunk was kept. At times, the family had decided to divide up what was in here, and Sophie can have this and Freddie can have that. And she made sure that most of the stuff stayed in the trunk so it wasn't spread out among the family. Excuse me. This is the King house that sat on the Dunstan Landing Road. I've tried for years to find out when it was actually torn down. There is a house there now that they tell me was built in the 1860s. And yet people tell me this postcard with a picture on it was taken in 1900s. Now that doesn't make sense. It can't be 1860 and 1900s. So I can't tell you exactly when that house was taken down. But this part right in here is supposed to be part of the original. Now to the contents. This is Richard King. I don't know which Richard King, whether it's the son or the father, but this is a pair of eyeglasses. I can't see it real well. But what interested me was this little ring, at the back of the earpieces. I don't know if it was to tie them on tight or what it was used for, but I thought that was interesting. This is a nightcap or a bonnet that was in here. In the notebook, it says it belonged to Hannah or her mother, and they called it a nightcap. Now this, you can't see it that well, but there's a lady wearing that bonnet. You can see her right there. So I'm not sure that it was a nightcap, although that's what they call it. This is a coverless book called The Art of Reading, printed in Boston in 1802, given to Fidelia, the owner of the trunk, when she started school by Aunt Mary Southgate. Now that was back to the original. Am I swiping the wrong way? Mary, this Mary. These are the nails that were recovered from William King's house in Kingfield when it was torn down in 1900. They're the hand-forged nails that house was put together with. This is a scrap of cloth saved from the wedding vest of Aaron Hawks, who married Fidelia. These are the silver tongs given to Richard King, the father, the son, the father to the son on his wedding day. This is the snuff box that Hannah Larrabee carried with her. It was her father's, and she carried it with her.
What would the tongs be used for?
Pardon?
What would the tongs be used for?
Sugar cubes,
Oh,
lifting sugar cubes. This is a beaded bag brought back from the West by one of Fidelia's sons. And it was supposedly made by the Indians. These were calling cards, both in one envelope with this fancy seal on it. This is the coffin plate for Joseph Leland King. And here's Joseph Leland, the Hawks, but who was Joseph Leland. Here's the coffin plate that was put on the coffin for Hannah King.
were they buried with these plates? How was that? How were those used?
Apparently they were buried with them on the coffin, but later people dug the coffin up and took the plate off so they could have it.
Oh, wasn't that nice of them?
Now this is a child's handkerchief made by Old Lady Hines. That's how it is identified in the book. When she was 86, and it was made from a dress of her daughter's. This is a brass hatchet pin carried through the war by Uncle William Hawks. I have tried to find out which William Hawks this could be. Can't be Fidelia's Uncle William, because that was governor of Maine. So I don't know who is calling him uncle in order to know which generation he belongs to. But he carried it throughout the war.
Which war?
If
we knew that, we might know which one he was.
Yeah, we don't know what war, and we don't know who's calling him uncle, so
Being a tomahawk, it might have been a lot of the French and Indian wars.
it could have been. This is the kerchief that belonged to Aaron Hawks. Aaron was the husband of Fidelia. Again, what was the kerchief used for? Did it go around his neck? Did he pull it up over his face to keep the dust out of his face? How did he use it? This is a necklace bought by Margaret Hawks, who was Fidelia's daughter, with the first 25 cents that she ever earned. This is the Noah's Ark toy that was given to Governor William King when he was a child, and he played with it. All of these things are up here that you can look at later. This is the picture that Fidelia, who kept the trunk, bought in Portland when she was 6 years old. And the handle is broken on it. She was born in 1880. So in 1814, she bought that little picture. This is a purse that Hannah Hanson of Wyndham made for Fidelia. And Mrs. Hanson made this purse for me.
Excuse me, did she move to Wyndham when they married?
Yes, the Hawkses are Wyndham family.
Right.
This is a child's apron that Fidelia made for her first child, according to the book. Her first child was Benjamin, so I'm not sure what the story was about making an apron for a little boy.
But they used to put dresses on
Yeah,
boys.
that's
back
true.
then,
For
too.
christening,
Yeah.
Keep them clean.
This is an ivory envelope opener. Now this is something that's fascinated me. It looks like a clothespin, but as near as I can identify, it's called a busk and was used to hold a corset in its place.
Comfy.
These are two Wyndham women, Sarah Elder and Mary Hawes. This is Charles Gammon. He was Miranda Southgate's son, the fourth child. He fought in the Civil War. The red piece is a piece of cloth from Hannah Larrabee's cloak. Now, Hannah Larrabee was the wife of Richard the son. These are a couple of hat pins with one of the pin cushions that was in the trunk. Now, these are two heart-shaped pin cushions that were made by hand. You don't know who they belong to. This is a pencil holder. Inside is a pencil. This is a beaded boot. There is no, it's child size, but there is no information on whose boot it might have been. These are identified as a pair of slippers, but again, no identification as to whose. Now this is beautiful. It is a hand quilted pot holder. This is one side, and this is the other. All the work that went into a pot holder. This is a knotted tidy, and a tidy was put on the back of a chair so that you wouldn't get your hair grease and so forth on the chair. Another beaded pocketbook. This is a tin box that was in the trunk. It was originally full of letters, which I've taken out and flattened and put in archival pages. But now it has many locks of hair. Apparently, as near as I can research, it was a tradition to take a lock of hair from somebody who had passed away as a memento, as a remembrance of that person. Here is the box when it was opened with all the letters in it. This is a tin candle holder. I would say it was handmade. This is a piece of Mary King's wedding dress that she wove herself. Now I'm guessing that Mary King they talk about is, I'm guessing it's this Mary that married Dr. Southgate. This is a piece that puzzled me for quite some time. It's called a Russian ornament. I thought it was a piece of jewelry. It's not. It's a Russian ornament. This is a medicine spoon for a child. There is a little hole in the bottom of the ladle so that the medicine would drain out into the child's mouth. Here's a lock plate, needle holders, now somebody really must have been bored. This is a carved peach pit.
If you Google that on Pinterest, you might still find people doing that.
These are brass thimbles that were in there, and I found it interesting to know that there's no end in it. It slid right down over your finger. This is a piece of very fine cloth that was in there, no identification as to what it was. These are pieces of jewelry that were in there, and you see over here the tomahawk that was carried, the peach pit, and other pieces that were in there with no identification. This is a salt spoon. I don't know if any of you have been acquainted with a salt cellar, which is a little dish that you take a pinch. Well, apparently, the more well-to-do had a spoon to do that with. This is an ivory peg. Have no idea what it was used for, but it's made out of ivory. This is an ear scoop. How many of you know what an ear scoop is? When you have wax in your ears, there is, on the end of this, whoop, you can't see it, but right on the end here, there's a little scoop with a hole in it. And you stick it in your ear and wiggle it around till you got the wax in it, and then pull the wax out. This is one of the locks of hair that was in the trunk. However, it has the name of two different people on it. So I don't know who belonged to that piece of hair, but one of two people. A note in the notebook that we have here said one of the members received the mirror that stood in the hall of Richard King the Father's, and when she received it, there was no piece bigger than a splinter. So that is long gone. Pieces that were given out of the trunk before it came to us was Richard King the son's account book and Richard or Williams, we're not sure which, Masonic apron that was made of lambskin. These things were given to members of the family before the trunk was given to us. Quilt top of the 7 Wonders of the World, a fan from Paris, France, and a wedding picture with strawberries or rosebuds on it. Things that are supposed to be in here, but we haven't been able to locate, are a glass decanter of Richard King the Father's, a piece of the best table cover, a baby shirt, an alabaster plate, a wooden spoon, Fidelia's ring, pen and ink sketches of the California mountains done by one of the kings, a silk quilt top, a piece of U.S. mint with the Lord's Prayer on it, and Uncle Henry's account book and day book. We do have this book. It has a lot of nifty information in it. Whoever made it copied news clippings that were deteriorating, and they copied them by hand in here. They listed the contents of the trunk of what should be there, and as far as they knew, who belonged to what. It has several copies of the genealogy in it, and they list why the people were famous. I don't know if they got carried away with what their famous relatives did, or if history has got it wrong. But what they say and what history says doesn't always agree in the book. But it is all hand copied. There's an account book, somebody's account book that is hand copied in here also. So that is my presentation. I have some of the things up here on the table that you can look at that I talked about. There are still more things that I didn't talk about. I didn't want to spend all afternoon showing you pictures of old things. So thank you very much.
Thank you.